We want to arrest him. 42 years is too much.
Libya, a state of terror. At this time on Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the News Hour, live from Doha. I'm Imran Garda from Al Jazeera News Centers in Doha and Washington, D.C. These are the main stories. A fierce battle. Rebel forces in a strategic oil town in Libya repel an attack by pro-Gaddafi forces. The Arab League says it would consider imposing a no-fly zone over Libya in conjunction with the African Union.
I'm Shebra Tansi in Washington with the top story from the Americas.
Let's just call a spade a spade. A no-fly zone begins with an attack on Libya.
The U.S. Defense Secretary again warns of the complexities of military intervention in Libya.
Preparing for a refugee crisis on the Tunisian-Libya border, the UN sets up camps for those with nowhere to go. Ordered to step down, Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus is told to leave his job as MD of his microfinance bank. Battles are being waged in key Libyan cities with pro-Gaddafi forces attempting to regain territory from opposition groups. Heavily armed rebels have repelled forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi from the eastern Libyan port of Breka. We'll have more on that in a short while, but first, Huda Abdul Hamid reports from the eastern opposition stronghold of Benghazi, where battle cries are being heard on the streets.
Tensions are high in Benghazi as Gaddafi loyalist forces reach the oil fields of Brega, just 200 kilometers away. On the streets, calls for men to defend their city and demands for quick action from the international community.
We want the UN to impose no-fly zones so their planes cannot fly. Close the sky.
A demand that went one step further in a formal request by the newly formed Transitional National Council.
We
call on the UN to take the necessary steps to stop the massacre of the people by mercenaries and other forces. We call on the UN to denounce countries which are supporting the regime. We call on the international community to carry out pinpointed airstrikes on the mercenaries.
Since the beginning of the uprising, the opposition has been accusing African mercenaries of fighting along Gaddafi loyalists and admits it only has limited defense force. Feeling a counter-offensive may be fast approaching, volunteers now are mobilizing not only to protect Benghazi, but they say they're ready to go wherever the fight will be and to liberate other cities of Libya. Most of the volunteers have no experience in warfare and need expert help. Hundreds are said to have already gone to the fight. Many more are getting ready. There is a sense of urgency. Many in the East would like the international community to provide air support so long as there are no boots on the ground. Huda Abdul Hamid, Al Jazeera, Benghazi.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, fighting has also been taking place in the town of Breka. That's a strategic port town with a large industrial oil site, which you can see here. We know the opposition is currently in control of the installation. And the airport is another significant area. Both sides claim they are in control there. Our man on the ground there is Tony Bertley, who updated us on the situation in and around Breka.
The Air Force jet circled again, and this time it bombed the group of fighters we were with. They're strung out on a long stretch of the main highway here, and a huge explosion happened about 60 meters away from us, and it sent everyone scurrying. Second attack by the jet. It's going to show that there's heavy fighting going on in the town of Brega. We can't exactly see what's going on. We've been told that something like 250 to 300 pro-Gaddafi fighters are inside the town, and they are surrounded, we are told. It is a little bit chaotic, it's a little bit confusing to get the exact details of what is going on, but that's the story they're telling us here. I have to say it's a little bit disorganized. There's a lot of weaponry around, but there doesn't seem to be much in the terms of leadership here directing them. But at the moment, flying around, we're glad to say, but it was a very near miss.
Tony, yes, it does sound very close to you. Give us an idea of how many fighters you're with at the moment and a bit more of the scale of the opposition movement there.
6,000 are coming. You're not exactly sure that what you're being told is actually what's going to happen, but that's what we've been told.
Now, the Libyan leader, Muammar Gaddafi, has made a 3-hour address to an assembled crowd. He gave some explanation for the violent events seen in his country and spoke about Al-Qaeda cells in Libya, blaming them for the unrest.
Very small, dormant cells of Al-Qaeda, whose operatives infiltrated from outside, gradually and slowly. Some of them are Libyans residing abroad in Afghanistan, Iraq. Others are non-Libyan operatives. For Al-Qaeda, do not see any country. They look at all the countries as their Islamic empire.
The Arab League says it could impose a no-fly zone on Libya in coordination with the African Union if fighting continues. That's according to Secretary General Amr Moussa. The Arab League has also suspended Libya in protest at its crackdown on demonstrations.
We'll continue consultations on the best way to protect and guarantee the safety and security of the Libyan people and that of the Arab nations. We will not remain idle in light of the bloodshed that the Libyan people are facing, and therefore we may resort to a no-fly zone, and the Arab League and African Union are cooperating in this regard.
AlJazeera's Ayman Mohyuddin has been monitoring that meeting from Cairo.
Among them calls condemning the violence against civilians, more importantly calling on Libya to provide for and allow for the transfer of international humanitarian aid to the people of Libya. It called on Libyan authorities to protect the civilian population and to stop all forms of violence and allow peaceful protests to take place all across the country. In that regard, it's somewhat contradictory to the statements coming out of the Libyan leader today, who tried to say these protests were not, in fact, peaceful. At the same time, the League of Arab States called on Libya to allow for all international media access into the country. And more importantly, it said that the Libyan authorities must immediately restore all telephone communications and the internet. But very strong words from the League of Arab States against the Libyan government.
The U.S. Secretary of State has struck a note of caution about the possibility of military intervention in Libya, saying it's a long way off. Let's go to Shihab Ratansi in our Washington Broadcast Center for more. Shihab?
Yes, Imran. In fact, several senior administration figures have been speaking up about Libya. First, then, Hillary Clinton speaking at a U.S. Senate hearing. She also said the Obama administration is concerned about Libya, as she put it, quote, becoming a giant Somalia.
We don't know the outcome of this. We don't know these players. You know, we faced a similar situation in the Balkans, where there were many, many reasons why it was not viewed with favor that we would set up a no-fly zone, for a lot of the similar reasons: the difficulty of it, the maintenance of it, the appearance